While the DCEU is dying a slow, painful death, we're seeing box office bomb after box office bomb associated with this shared universe that never really took off. James Gunn and Peter Safran, the new heads of DC Studios, are planning out the DCU. They got a 10-year plan. We've got the director for the Swamp Thing. I think it's James Mangold. We've got the director for Superman. Obviously, that is James Gunn himself. I believe he's writing that one as well. And now we have the director for the Batman movie. And not surprising, because we have heard this rumor going around. It is someone currently associated with the DCEU that James Gunn, Peter Safran, and probably more importantly, David Zaslav are very impressed with. They're bringing him back. Andy Muschietti finalized a deal to direct The Brave and the Bold, the feature project that will introduce a new big screen version of Batman, one that will fit into the expansive universe being developed by DC studio heads James Gunn and Peter Safran. Brave and the Bold will exist in the main DC universe, while Robert Pattinson's own Dark Knight iteration is branded by the new heads as a DC Elseworld story, a moniker that allows DC to make movies set in alternate universes and outside the continuity that Gunn and Safran are working to establish. Pattinson has the Batman Part 2 due out in 2025. So there you have it, folks. The director for The Flash, which is opening in theaters this week and this weekend, looks like it's probably not going to do well. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Is going to be the third director associated with the DCU, obviously coming on board to direct The Brave and the Bold. And I don't know about you, but I have no belief that they will ever actually make a movie called The Brave and the Bold and release it. I just don't think most normies even know that The Brave and the Bold is associated with Batman. And I don't know, for a long time, it wasn't really just a Batman thing. It was basically like DC heroes in team-up stories. Now it's more associated with Batman than it used to be. But it's going to be called Batman, The Brave and the Bold, or maybe it'll be called the Cape Crusader or something actually associated with the character that normies outside of comic dorks like myself actually know about. Now, they have talked about Andy Muschietti's work on The Flash, and David Zaslav has touted that it's the best superhero movie ever made. That is yet to be seen. It doesn't look like the Rotten Tomato scores and a lot of the critics actually agree with this, but he is sticking around. I believe he and his wife, who's a producer, actually just inked a first look deal, I think, with Warner Brothers with their own a banner of movies that they put out their own line. So he's all in with Warner Brothers, and he's certainly going to be a big part of the DCU moving forward. I would prefer a Ben Affleck directed Batman movie rather than an Andy Muschietti directed Batman movie, but we shall see how that goes. It sounds like he's a little bit hot. Now, he doesn't have a whole lot of credits when it comes to like big movies. I know he did a short movie called Mama, which I think is like a horror thing that was actually turned into a big screen movie. Like it was a short film. They turned it into like a feature-length film. And then he did It 2, and now he's done The Flash. So he doesn't have a lot of films under his belt, but obviously It and It 2 were very financially successful and lucrative for Warner Brothers. So it's no doubt that they are investing in Andy Muschietti, an Argentine-born director, as being part of the future of the DCU itself. In addition to a new Batman, Brave and the Bold will introduce Damian Wayne, a murderous teen raised by assassins who also happens to be the son Batman never knew he had. The feature is inspired by writer Grant Morrison's Batman run that introduced Damian. It's a very strange father-son story Gunn told reporters in late January when announcing the movie. Brave and the Bold is part of the first chapter of storytelling in James Gunn and Peter Safran's DC universe, with other film titles including Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, Swamp Thing, and The Authority. On the small screen, titles include The Lanterns, Waller, and Paradise Lost. Of course, they didn't mention Superman Legacy, which is the James Gunn written and directed movie, which some people might find this surprising, but I would say is about 1 billion times more important as far as the casting and the execution of that movie, even more important than this Brave and the Bold project. Not just because it's the first movie coming out, and obviously they do want to set the tone of what this new DCU is going to be, but really the linchpin of the DC universe, a functioning DC universe that actually works, the thing that Zack Snyder actually never accomplished, and why the DCEU basically just failed across the board, is Superman himself. He has to be that iconic version of Superman that everyone loves. He's that beacon of hope within the DC universe, whether it's in comic books, on the big screen, on the small screen. Zack Snyder decided he wanted to make him like, I know, Hyperion from Marvel Comics, which is kind of like an evil version of Superman. And we've certainly seen evil versions of Superman. That's a pretty played out trope here. But actually making the version of Superman in the DC universe kind of that edgier version was never going to work out. So in my opinion, Superman Legacy is actually more important because I think we've seen at this point, it doesn't matter how good your Batman movie is. Just having Batman as the starring character in a movie will make it successful. they could probably cast Shia LaBeouf as Batman in Brave and the Bold, and people would still go see it and tolerate it and be like, yeah, I still like Batman because Batman is such a cool character. There's not as much nuance to Batman, in my opinion, as there is to Superman. Superman's a much harder character to pull off because he is the linchpin, like that beacon of hope within the DC universe. You know, and Batman is kind of juxtaposed to that. Yes, they work on the same side, and actually they're friends and all that stuff. But Batman has a much darker mission, and he gets to do a lot cooler stuff and save the day in much edgier ways, which just kind of come off as cooler. So it's a lot easier to do that. You can probably do anything you want with this Brave and the Bold movie. And even if it's bad, it'll probably make money. I believe Batman and Robin, one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life, actually made money. You remember the movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger as Dr. Freeze and I'll freeze your heart and all that stupid stuff? Like, just had bat nipples in it? Was that Batman and Robin? I believe it's Batman and Robin. And the Batman, credit card. There's so many stupid things in that. But that movie still made money because it was a Batman movie. And that's basically all you have to do with these. So it is important, and Damian Wayne is an interesting character. I wish they weren't skipping past Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, and Tim Drake as far as the Robins in this universe, because as far as I'm concerned, those are more impressive versions of Robin. Actually, I think those are better characters. But Damian is a cool character, but I kind of associate him more with Dick Grayson as Nightwing or Dick Grayson as Batman, specifically during Grant Morrison's Batman and Robin run, which was really fantastic. They had a better relationship because Dick Grayson, he's basically a father figure to him, but he never talks down to him. He earns his respect over time because Damian is just kind of a little shit is probably the best way that you can describe the character. So it could be interesting the way that they actually have to pull this off. I just wish they hadn't skipped past so many more awesome characters that I think are just more important and better characters than Damian Wayne. He's never been fully fleshed out properly. They've tried a few times, but every time they get him somewhere cool, they just devolve him back into like a little kid that was trained to be an assassin. That's a thorn in his dad's side, which, gets pretty boring, especially since it's been like 20 years now. It's basically the same thing over and over. Now, Andy Muschietti is an interesting choice because he did direct The Flash, but The Flash isn't exactly doing well right now. It opens up this weekend. I'm recording this Friday. The video will actually come out on Sunday. And it looks like The Flash is going to be the flop that we kind of all expected. The film, starring Ezra Miller in the titular role, started off its North American box office run with $9.7 million in previews. As a comparison, Sony's Venom started off with $10 million in previews on its way to a domestic opening of $80.3 million. The Flash has been tracking to open in the $70 million range over Father's Day weekend, but Warner Brothers is counting on upside. The studio's leadership has been hyping the movie for months. It's the best superhero movie I've ever seen. Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav told theater owners at CinemaCon in late April before they were shown the film in full. Many critics don't agree with the assessment. The pick currently has a 67% rating score on Rotten Tomatoes. So it doesn't look like it's the greatest superhero film in the history of the world. According to critics themselves, it's probably a good choice to bring Andy Muschietti back if they're going to laud him out there and say, this man has created the best superhero movie in the history of the world, and then they create a new shared superhero universe. It really wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, and it would certainly poke holes in what David Zaslav and James Gunn and others were saying about the Flash movie before it came out. It's just too bad if it is a good movie that is associated with a dead brand that basically has already died. We saw what happened with Shazam 2. We saw what happened with Black Adam. Obviously, that one had The Rock. And I wouldn't be surprised if Aquaman 2 actually bombs as well. Although, if Warner Brothers Discovery has some chance to make some money on one of these DCEU movies before the DCU kicks off, it's going to be that Aquaman movie. The first one made like $1 billion. Actually, the domestic numbers were pretty average, but it absolutely blew up overseas, specifically in Asia. They absolutely ate it up in Japan, Korea, and China and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happened again, but they shouldn't be counted on it, you know what I mean? Because basically everything that they distributed, since they said the DCEU itself is dead and the DCU is the way forward, and we are not going to see that for several more years, has basically bombed. And I imagine Blue Beetle will bomb as well, but it's good news for Andy Muschietti. Yes, it looks like your movie, The Flash, is in the middle of bombing at the theaters, but you're going to direct the next Batman movie. I definitely want to hear from you guys. Do you find this exciting? Do you think it's a good choice? I find it an interesting choice, and it certainly backs up what David Zaslav and other people had said about the movie, that they really believed in what Muschietti had done with The Flash, and they're doubling down and giving him the big Batman movie that's coming up. Obviously, that's separate from Robert Pattinson's The Batman movie from Matt Reeves that's also going to be coming out in 2025. But there won't be any confusion because that's Elseworlds. Moviegoers worldwide know about that concept. Now, like I said, I do wish Ben Affleck was directing this, and it sounded like for a minute at least, there was actually a good chance of that. James Gunn had said he had reached out to Ben Affleck, and it sounded like Ben Affleck was going to be a part of the DCU moving forward, not as an actor, but as a director. It turns out that was wrong. It was dead wrong. Ben Affleck wants nothing to do with the DCU moving forward. I don't think it has anything to do with James Gunn himself, but he is out. If you haven't seen this video, definitely check it out right now. There's also a link in the video description.